everyone. So this is going to be the last video. We're actually going to just do continuing with the practice of factoring when we have a trinomial and the first term is not a 1. The leading term is not 1. It's something other than that. So we're going to continue doing that whole coming up with a extended grouping form. So right here, here's the first set of questions. Pause the video, work itself. We'll go in a second. So like I said, the whole point of this video is just so that you can get some more practice because some people are still having trouble with this. So I just want to make sure that I cover as best as I can. So once again, you have your trinomial. You're going to take the first term and the last term and multiply them. So 5 and 3 gets us 15. Now I'm looking for two numbers that multiply to 15 and add it to negative 8. So that would be negative 1 and negative 15, negative 3 and negative 5, and that's pretty much it. So adding these numbers up, we see that the only ones that add up to negative 8 is the negative 3 and negative 5. So again, I take these two numbers, plug them back into the original equation, but replace the negative 8 that we just found added to, and I'll end up having it like this. Now, I don't really like the way this is written, but it doesn't really matter because I'll end up getting the right answer anyway. So remember, it doesn't really matter which term goes where. So I'm going to do this, then I'm going to group my first two terms, group the last two terms, keeping that negative in with this second group, and I'm going to factor out greatest common factor. Here I can factor out an a, and I'm left with 5a minus 3. Over here, the most I can do is factor out a minus negative 1, so that I'm brought back to 5a minus 3. So the common term is 5a minus 3, so that's my first factor. My second factor will be the terms I pulled out. So I pulled out an a from over here, and I pulled out a negative 1. So my full factor becomes 5a minus 3, a minus 1. All right, now on to number 3. So once again, I take the two numbers, 3 and negative 5, and I multiply them. And I'm going to get negative 15. Now remember, because this is a negative number, when I do my factors, one of the two numbers will end up having to be negative. And since this number is positive, that means my bigger number is going to be positive. So once again, the 15 will be negative 1 and positive 15, and negative 3 and positive 5. Adding up these numbers, this becomes 14. This is 2. So once again, my numbers are 3 and 5, but now it's a negative 3 and a positive 5. So I'm going to take my equation, 3y squared. I'm going to replace the 2y with negative 3 and positive 5. So negative 3y plus 5y. And then I have the negative 5 from over there. So it's basically just delete this, input this. I'm going to group my terms, group and group. I can take out a 3y from over here. So I divide both terms by 3y. And I'm going to be left with y minus 1. Over here, I can divide a 5 out from each term. And I end up getting y minus 1. So my factors will end up being the y minus 1, that common term from both sides, and then the numbers I pulled out. I pulled out a 3y over here, and I pulled out a positive 5. So I write them, and that ends up being my factor. All right? And that's pretty much it. So we're going to do about, I believe, 6 more questions. So pause the video where itself. We'll go over in a second. All right. So take the 2, take the negative 15. 2 times negative 15. this will get us negative 30. So two numbers that multiply to negative 30 add to negative 7. The negative meaning the bigger number is going to be the negative one. So I'm going to have 1 and negative 30, 2 and negative 15, 3 and negative 10, and I believe, oh wait, and 5 and negative 6. Going through all these terms, the only one that would add up to negative 7 would be this one, 3 and negative 10. So 3 and negative 10 are my numbers. So I'm going to rewrite the equation, except I'm going to replace the negative 7x with positive 3x minus 10x, and then I'm going to have the negative 15. Group the first two terms, group the last two terms. So from here I can pull out an x, and that leaves me with 2x plus 3. Here I can pull out a negative 5, and I'd be left with 2x plus 3. The common term is 2x plus 3, so that's going to be my first factor. Make sure not to double it. It's not both of these, it's just only one copy. And then x was pulled out here, and a negative 5 was pulled out over there. So this is my factor. Again, you could always double check by expanding this out. One thing that I just wanted to point out is make sure that you're actually using the math, because again, this is your check to make sure you're on the right track. If you find out that you don't get common factors, that either means that you did your math wrong, you didn't do greatest common factor, or the equation may not, the trinomial may not actually be factorable using this method. So don't just assume that it's going to work and that it will end up giving you the same term. You want to actually make sure you have it. Alright, so take the two numbers, 2 times negative 2. So this gets us a negative 4. So writing down all the factors, that could add up to negative 3, 1 and negative 4, and then 2 and negative 2. So the only one this could be would be this one. This is the only 1 and negative 4 is the only one that adds up to negative 3. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, 2b squared. Replace the negative 3b with plus 1b minus 4b minus 2. Group the first two and last two. So from here, divide out a b, and I'll be left with 2b plus 1. Over here, I could divide out negative 2, and you get 2b plus 1. The common term here is 2b plus 1, so that's my first factor. And my second factor will be the b that I pulled out of here, and the negative 2 that I pulled out of there. Alright, here are the next two questions. Pause video, work and stuff, and we'll go over in a second. Alright, so we're going to take these numbers, 7 and negative 45, and we're going to get a very large number of negative 315. So we're going to go through all the terms, and there are a lot of factors. So it'll be 1 and negative 315. 2 is not going to be divisible by it, but 3 is. So this will end up being 3 and negative 105. 4 is not a factor, but 5 is. So 5 and negative 63. 7 is a factor. 7 and negative 45. 8's not a factor, but 9 is a factor. And right there we can actually stop and realize that we have our answer, because if I add 9 and negative 35, I get negative 26. Alright, so now what I'm going to do is rewrite the equation, 7x squared plus 9, 9x minus 35x minus 45. Group the first two terms, group the last two terms. I can divide out an x from this first section, and I'll be left with the 7x plus 9. Over here, the biggest number that I could pull out is going to be a negative 5. So negative 5, that leaves me with a 7x over here and a positive 9 on over here. So 7x plus 9 is my common term. So that's my first factor. And my second factor will be the x from over there and the negative 5 from over there. And that's it. Now, one thing I noticed is that a lot of people haven't been showing their work. They did the grouping method in the past quiz, but they didn't really show how they got the numbers. They didn't show this. They kind of just wrote that they rewrote this equation like this. Then they went from grouping this to going straight to the answer. You need to show all your steps. This is basically the minimum amount of work that you need to see when you're showing your work for this. All right. So over here, we do 5 and 24. When we multiply that, we get 120. So all the factors that multiply to 120, 1 and 120, 2 and 60, 3 and 40, 5 and 24. Where is it? 5 and 24, and then 6 and 20. So right here, we find that these are our two numbers that when we add them, will get us 26. So I'm going to rewrite my equation, 5x squared plus 6x plus 20x plus 24. Group the first two terms, group the last two terms. So over here, I can divide out an x, and I'll be left with a 5x plus 6. And then over here, the biggest number that I can pull out would be a 4. So I'm going to have plus 4 over here. And then I'll be left with 5x plus 6 again. So 5x plus 6 is my common term. So that's going to be my first factor. And then my next factor will be the x from over here and the plus 4 from over there. And there we go. All right. And these will be the last two questions. So pause the video, work yourself, and we'll go over in a second. All right. So looking at this, our two terms will be 2 and negative 6. And that gets us negative 12. So two numbers that will end up multiplying to positive 1. So negative 1 and 12, those aren't going to be it. Negative 2 and 6, that doesn't add. But negative 3 and 4, when we add those numbers, we get plus 1. So rewriting the equation, 2y squared plus 4y minus 3y minus 6. Group the first two, group the last two. Over here, I could divide out a 2y, that's my greatest common factor. So what I'm left with is a y plus 2. Over here, the biggest number that I can divide out is negative 3. So negative 3, and then I'm left with the y plus 2 again. So the common term is y plus 2. And then over here, my second term will be the 2y that I pulled out from that first section and the minus 3 that I pulled out from the second. This one, 4 and 5, multiply to get us 20. So two numbers that will end up adding to negative 12. This means that since this is a positive and this is negative, that both of my numbers actually have to be negative. So let's see, it's going to be -1 and -20. That doesn't work. -2 and -10. That works, so I can actually stop right there. Adding these two numbers does get me -12. So my equation becomes 4b squared minus 2b minus 10b plus 5. Group the first two, group the last two. Divide out 2b over here and a 2b over here. So when I pull that out, I'm left with a 2b minus 1. Over here, my greatest common factor will be -5. So when I pull that out, I'll be left with a 2b minus 1. 2b minus 1 is my common term. So that'll be 2b minus 1. And then I'll be left with a 2b from that term and the -5 from this term. And that's it. All right. Hopefully this extra practice kind of made a little bit more sense for those who were still having a little bit of trouble. Again, the best way to kind of help out is to or to improve yourself is just do as many practice questions as you can. These are the 2 exit questions, so you're going to factor these completely. Pause the video, answer them. Like I said, if you have any questions, please let me know. If you have issues, contact me as soon as you can. Come to Extra Help. Make sure you're doing as many of the problems that you can. All right. Good luck and have a great day.